Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Context is King. I'm Rebecca Brayton, and with me as always is WatchMojo founder and CEO Ashkan Karbasfrooshan to discuss Just for Laughs. What do I mean by that? Thank you for coming. Just for Laughs, you mentioned on a podcast that WatchMojo was going to buy Just for Laughs with ICM.
Yeah, so by the way, I understand why sometimes like 5 years later, somebody's like, so-and-so said something because it was buried in a podcast. I mean, this was only about a week ago that it was published, but a month ago I was on a podcast, Video Insiders, with Carlos Pacheco. Check it out, it's in the link. And at some point he used to work at Just for Laughs, and so we were talking about best practices, yada, yada. And yeah, I mentioned it that, believe it or not, after the founder was ensnared in a Me Too scandal, I had met him. You might have noticed that we've done some video partnerships with them. We distributed like Kevin Hart at Just for Laughs and many others, Mr. Bean. And so when we were chatting, we looked at like what could we do together, and then we kind of went our separate ways. And after the Me Too scandal hit, you know, I obviously laid low, and he laid low for a few days, and not cool what the allegations are. But I did reach out. I said, hey, look, if it's true that you're going to be looking at selling the iconic Just for Laughs festival, then we may be interested in taking a look, not knowing how big or small it is. You know, I'll always tell Canadians that WatchMojo is the next media and entertainment export out of Montreal, following in the footsteps of Cirque du Soleil, Vice Media, and Just for Laughs. So wanted to basically take a look at that.
Right. So why do you think this deal didn't work out?
Well, I think the reason why I wanted to do the deal is because I felt WatchMojo was like this entertainment powerhouse, and Just for Laughs was this comedy powerhouse, and we're in, you know, media, content production, internet. They are in stand-up. They are in e-commerce, ultimately, you know, selling tickets. And I just felt the marriage of that might be really, really interesting, like going from a YouTube channel, not just to a media company, but like this diversified, you know, global beast. Somebody on Twitter called us a global international corporation, and I laughed. But so it was kind of like I felt there was a thesis there to explore. The reason why it didn't work is pretty simple. For one, I think we would have had to use a little bit of debt, leverage, and the bank, frankly, this is really inside baseball, but it might be interesting. So ultimately, the bank that was going to, that was involved with all of the players was one bank, and they got a bit of cold feet having that much exposure to a transaction. So that's really mergers and acquisitions inside baseball. But two, ICM liked that we were, and I'm sure they love that I'm just spilling the beans here, but it's all good. We're cool with ICM, I hope, anyway. ICM liked that we were digital media, global, wanted to take this iconic festival that's ultimately local into a much bigger thing. But the ICM guys, which is you know, one of the largest talent agencies in the world, along with CAA, UTA, and of course, William Morris Endeavor. So I think to their credit, ICM just said, well, wait a second, WatchMojo is a great possible partner, but we're going to need something like a Live Nation to actually manage this. So they ended up partnering with Evenco. And Evenco, that those who don't know, is like imagine if Live Nation and MSG were one. Meaning, like, imagine if Live Nation and the owner of the New York Yankees were the same company. So Evenco is not just a local music festival behemoth, but they also own the Montreal Canadiens. And they also own the Jazz Festival in Montreal. So I think to their credit, and, you know, I've always said Jeff Molson, oh, Jeff's really not going to like that I'm going in all these details. I've always said Jeff Molson is a better businessman than he is a sports owner. Ooh, but it's true. That's a compliment, Jeff, if you are not watching, or now somebody's going to send this to you. No, I mean that. I mean, look, he's a good sports owner. Like, he cares about the team. He'll be great if and when we win a championship under his regime.
At least you said if and when.
I think anything can happen. Stranger shit has happened. We have an $85 million goaltender, right? So anything is possible. The point I want to make, there's always a detour when I'm trying to tell a story, but ultimately, I feel he's a great businessman, and he recognized that he had leverage in the situation, and he said, look, we, Evenco, are already partnered with Bell Media. They're co-owners in the Habs. I'm assuming WatchMojo was the odd man out, and I get that, and I think that's life, and there's a lot more deals that don't get done than do. We ourselves, you know, we've talked about WatchMojo and other companies 20, 30 times, and, you know, for every one deal that happens that gets in the trades, there's 90 that didn't get done.
Now that we're like, what was it, like a year ago that this happened?
It was exactly a year ago.
Yeah, so now that we're like a year on, How do you feel about this situation? Is it like one of those things you're like, you're glad this didn't happen, or?
Okay, I will preface it by saying people lie. They're always like, if I had to do things again, I wouldn't do anything differently, no regrets. Bullshit, I regret the shoes I'm wearing right now. You know what I mean? Like, I would have ordered something differently. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying you should learn from things. I learned so much from that process. I learned enormously. I have a very, as I said, I used to be naive and idealistic. I'm trying to shed the naivete, but retain the idealism. So I learned a lot. I still think that would have made a lot of sense for the joint combined entity. But I could see how nestled in between the objectives of an ICM, the objectives of, let's say, an Evenco, which realistically would have been in the mix, working with Jeff Molson is like, that's like the Vatican here. But so the point was between Evenco, ICM, eventually Bell, and that whole cornucopia of partners, I feel like it would have been taking on a lot of needless distractions for us as well, but it would have been a very interesting story going forward. That's life.
Yeah. What's your crazy dream world deal?
Could we leave that for another Context is King episode?
Yes, we can. All right. Well, I guess Just for Laughs just needed some guy with no hair to run it. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. And if you have any comments or questions, be sure to leave them in the comments.